this afternoon. On behalf of the African Union Commission and the United Nations Development Program, Africa, I welcome you, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, to this afternoon where we are engaged in this high-level virtual meeting on women in governance and political participation, enhancing African women's role in leadership under the theme, leveraging women leadership in the COVID-19 response and beyond. All protocol duly observed. My name is Salah Hamad. I'm from the Department of Political Affairs of the African Union Commission, and a proud he for she, and I will be the moderator for the opening ceremony and the overall moderator of today's program. As you all know, this program will begin today and also proceed for tomorrow afternoon. So since we are in Addis Ababa, let me begin by saying good afternoon and good morning to those who are in the western part of the hemisphere. And I'm not sure if there is any of those who are in the eastern part of the globe, but let me also say good evening as well. We'll proceed with the opening ceremony of this program. And after that, we have a number of sessions before we conclude for today. The opening program or ceremony will begin with welcoming remarks delivered by Her Excellency Ambassador Minata Samati Sisuma, African Union Commissioner for Political Affairs. Your Excellency, you have the floor, please. Your Excellency, Commissioner. Hello, Commissioner. Hello.
I think we seem to have lost the commissioner. We'll try and get her back. Yeah, we seem to have lost her. We'll try and get her back.
Okay, meanwhile, can we proceed then with our program? Is that possible, Angela?
Yes, please go ahead.
So then allow me, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, to call on Her Excellency Ms. Ahuna Ezekwona, Assistant Secretary General and Director of UNDP Africa, to deliver her statement. Your Excellency, you have the floor, please.
All right. Greetings to all. Let me see if I can get I think my video is still on. Okay, great. Thank you very much, Ambassador Hamad, for getting us started today. Let me welcome all of you to this session, a very important day, great day indeed for all of us to be discussing this topic while we wait for the Commissioner to get back on board. But let me start by sending greetings to her, Her Excellency Mrs. Minata Samate Sesuma, Commissioner of Political Affairs at the African Union Commission. Let me also send warm greetings to my sister, Madam Bineta Diop, the Special Envoy on Women, Peace and Security at the African Union Commission, Dr. Pumzile Mlambo Kuga, our UN Under-Secretary General and UN Women Executive Director, welcome. And His Excellency, Mr. Thomas Kwesi Fateh, the Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission, I understand is also with us. Warm welcome to you, sir. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us, really, and honoring our invitation to this high-level virtual forum on women in governance and political participation towards enhancing African women's role in leadership, with a special focus on leveraging women's leadership in the COVID-19 response and beyond. We have worked on women's issues for decades. Projects, programs, and various interventions have impacted the situation of women positively. But we're still not there. We're not where we want to be. And why is that? I think it's because something has been missing. There is no platform really for concerted, galvanized pressure to promote women to sit at those tables where decisions really matter. Today, we're changing that. We gather here from across the globe under the umbrella of the African Women Leaders Network to co-create a platform that will change the future of Africa's women in governance and leadership. Coronavirus has reminded us of the glaring gap in women's empowerment and the structural vulnerabilities that women face. We change it by 3 key interventions. First, we must ensure that women's voices and their needs are at the table when decisions are made that affect their lives. Coronavirus responses must include women if they are to really work. We must ensure that we break from old habits of hoping that benefits trickle down to women. It does not work. Secondly, we have to invest in technology and financing to scale up opportunities and voices for women and choices for women. Coronavirus has shut down women's livelihoods, 80% of which are self-employed or working in family enterprises compared to 60% for men. And who is at table to speak for women? This platform promises to change that by expanding the space and mobilizing pressure to ensure women remain at that table. Thirdly, and final point, we must safeguard women's health, their education, and their personal security. Coronavirus has revealed that we are still at the basic premise of protecting women from sexual violence. That a silent gender-based violence pandemic coexists with COVID is quite telling. Today marks a clear call to action for gender equality in governance and leadership. We take on a commitment, not only to launch the platform, but to herald what it stands for by ensuring in our work, in our homes, in our politics, that the women's voice, the woman's voice is heard and that it counts. This initiative, ladies and gentlemen, Women in Governance is a beacon to guide what we can accomplish together to ensure that women everywhere across gender enjoy their rights to participate and be represented in governance and leadership at all levels. We move today from participation to influence to demonstrable change. Let's make it count. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, Ms. Ahuna Ariza Kwana, Assistant Secretary General and Director of UNDP Africa, for your welcoming remarks. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as we are all aware, the African Union Department of Political Affairs, in close collaboration with UNDP, is leading the development and implementation of an action plan to promote women's equal representation and participation in governance through facilitating the effective implementation of related national, regional, and global relevant legal and policy frameworks. So, in addition to that, it is extremely important to highlight the fact that this high-level dialogue is also addressing the importance of women leadership in the response to COVID-19 pandemic. It is now my honor to invite Her Excellency, Madam Ambassador Minata Samati Sisuma, the African Union Commissioner for Political Affairs, to deliver her welcoming remarks. Your Excellency, you have the floor, please.
Merci beaucoup, ambassadeur Salah. La technique m'a lâché, j'ai changé d'ordinateur pour pouvoir me joindre avec vous et j'espère que ça va aller. Je voudrais saluer, je vois sur la plateforme son Excellence Madame Hélène Johnson Sirleaf, ancienne présidente du Libéria, la vice-présidente du Libéria et l'ensemble des participants que je tiens à saluer. On est un peu en retard. Je dis pour tout protocole vraiment observé. Je tiens à vous dire merci pour votre participation. Je vois Madame Diop, Poumzile, ma soeur Gawana et d'autres personnalités du système des Nations Unies. On m'a dit également qu'il y a des ministres qui sont avec nous. Je tiens à dire merci, comme l'a fait ma soeur Aouna, que je salue et que je remercie pour son leadership sur ce projet et tout ce que nous avons fait ensemble. Je voudrais, mesdames et messieurs, indiquer que la problématique des femmes en politique ne date pas de maintenant. Nous avons enregistré certainement des succès dans ce domaine, mais beaucoup de défis restent à relever, beaucoup d'obstacles pour qu'on puisse avoir suffisamment de femmes en politique et en matière de gouvernance d'une manière générale. Il y va du développement, de la paix et de la sécurité sur le continent africain et également du bien-être même et d'une Afrique qui compte également. On a besoin du leadership des femmes sur le continent africain, d'où l'importance de notre initiative et de la réunion que nous avons, les consultations que nous avons déjà eues et le forum d'aujourd'hui et le lancement du plan d'action demain. Malheureusement, le Covid aussi est venu s'ajouter, ce qui a compliqué la tâche au niveau de nous femmes. Les femmes sont très vulnérables, elles sont impactées par tous les effets du coronavirus et nous allons réfléchir également sur cette question et vous dire que vous êtes la bienvenue sur ce plateau, sur ce webinaire et surtout vous remercier pour votre présence et je souhaite de fructueuses délibérations à notre rencontre avec mes excuses pour le retard. J'ai un discours, mais je ne voudrais pas être long parce que nous sommes déjà en retard. Et merci beaucoup, ambassadeur Salah. Et avec mes excuses auprès de toutes celles que je n'ai pas pu citer, mais je salue, on les voit sur la plateforme. Je tiens à leur dire merci et merci à nos collaborateurs aussi du PNUD de l'Union africaine et d'autres partenaires qui sont avec nous également. Merci beaucoup, ambassadeur Salah.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, Madam Commissioner, for your brief welcoming remarks. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are all quite aware that both the United Nations and the African Union have clear visions for the participation of women in governance, but also for the participation of women in peace and security. The African Union, as we all aware, declared this year, 2020, a year to silence the guns in Africa. So therefore, the role of women is not only or the voices of women are not only heard when they are victims, but they are also heard when they are partners and they are contributors to bringing peace and to prevent and manage conflicts in Africa. So I would like to call at this moment on Her Excellency Madame Beneta Diop, the African Union Special Envoy on Women, Peace and Security, to deliver her keynote remarks. Your Excellency, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much. I want to unmute, but somebody have to do it for me to start the video.
Madame Diop.
Yes. Yes, it's a technical problem. I think somebody have to unmute me. Yes, it's done. Ambassador Salah, our he for she, thank you for moderating this high-level panel. Let me also stand on the existing protocol, but recognize the former president of Liberia and actual vice president of Liberia, and also salute the presence of the Ambassador Kwesi Kwate, the deputy chairperson, and the Commissioner Amira El Fadil, who is also with us, and all the women leaders in their own right, either in the UN or AU or civil society, and all the dignitaries. Permit me to start my remarks with word of appreciation to my sisters, Ambassador Minata Samate Tesuma and Auna Eziakonva, for us steering the conversation we are having since last week on women in governance and political participation. I think you are, both of you, coming with concrete solutions that could be implemented, but also scaled up at every level in our continent. Let me also thank Ambassador Kwate for his support and being side by side with women on numerous occasions to advance the gender equality and women's empowerment agenda. An agenda driven at the global level by my dear sister, Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, the Executive Director of UN Women, with whom I share the pleasure and commitment to serve as co-convener of the Africa Women Leaders Network. Excellency, I wish to argue that if there is one message that is coming strongly out of the numerous initiatives to fight the COVID-19 pandemic, is the statement that there is no room for business as usual. Indeed, business should not be as usual on the issue of women in governance or women leadership. The disease has exposed many existing gaps. It has been highlighted during the previous consultation, including the absence or little presence of women in the decision-making circle. In the recent paper titled, "Why Do Women Make Such Good Leaders During COVID-19?" Kemi Anderson concluded that, and I quote, "We think of gender diversity as being about representation, but COVID-19 shows us it is about high quality, life-saving leadership." And I think it has been demonstrated in the Liberia case by Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, our patron. COVID-19 became a security threat to women and girls with an incredible spike in violence against women and girls, mostly in their homes that are meant to be safe space. The spread of this violence is an indication that prevention and protection, cardinal pillars of the Women, Peace and Security agenda, need to be at the center of our responses. Coupled with enhanced participation and what Auna have said, influence, we need to define our strategy and action that could constitute key threat of a transformative leadership a life-saving leadership that women have shown in the face of many challenging situations, especially in conflict areas. The African Union have come very strongly, is the vanguard of advancing women leadership with the parity principle, which I think have been trickled down in some countries, including Rwanda, but it's not enough, as many of you have said. When it comes to election, Ambassador Salah, moderator, and all my sister here, I think what we need to look at is that the country that are determined to hold credible election, if they want to call it credible election, transparent election, they should protect the ballot of the citizen, ensure their safety, and uphold the right of women as candidates and voters. It's imperative that conditions are created to ensure safe space for women and enabling environment for them to mobilize, the 3M, mobilize, monitor, and also mediate in the prevention of violence for the credibility, as I said, of outcome. The AULIN, the African Women Leaders Network, has a critical role to play in ensuring fair and equitable governance structure through this pillar, the governance pillar, which is interlinked with other pillars of the network. I early on spoke about peace and security. The AULIN flagship project has also highlighted the mobilization of young women, those living in rural areas, and the issue of their financial inclusion, to leave no one behind. AULIN has the potential to drive sustainable change. In various consultations we had already on COVID-19, the network organized with ministers of gender, ministers of foreign affairs, women leaders of AULIN across the continent. The concrete recommendations were made to bolster women leadership with support to their action that are anchored on human security. Guidelines have been developed by the African Union to support the member state in their strategy to combat COVID and COVID-19 and the post-COVID recovery. As I conclude, it is incumbent upon us and other leaders to ensure that the 25 AULIN national chapters, spearheaded by UN Women, and any other subsequent ones are given the space and the opportunity to operate and ensure the fruition of our aspiration. Our priority should be focused toward real impact at the community level at the delivery of the flagship project driven by women leadership. I wish ourselves, all of us, wish that our deliberation very fruitful outcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Madam Special Envoy on Women, Peace and Security for this keynote remarks. And I would like now to move ahead to our next speaker, and that is Her Excellency Dr. Fomozile Malabu Goka. She is the Under-Secretary General of the United Nations and the Executive Director of the UN Women. Your Excellency, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, and greetings to you, our he for she. Thank you for being here. I also stand on the protocol that has been observed, but I would like to greet our patron, Madam Ellen Johnson-Sirleaf, as well as Vice President of Liberia, my sisters from the AU, especially Excellency Commissioner Ambassador Sesosuma, and all the colleagues from the AU, my sisters from the UN, Hannah Tete, Beans Gowanas, and of course, our sister who has convened us here today, Ahuna. Thank you so much to all of you. When we formed AULIN in 2017, we had a vision of building a movement with women leaders anchored in grassroots politics, a movement that will bring together women across sectors, across generations, from all walks of life, with an entrenched civil society, but working together with women in governments and in private sector, and spiced by youth who brings the vibrancy. And I'm glad that so far we seem to manage to bring all these key components together. So I do want to thank my sisters from the women's movement, from civil society, for all they have done to enable my work and that of my sister Binetta to be relatively easy, challenging, but very fulfilling. I'm glad that we are now having 25 chapters and still growing. We hope by the end of this year, we would have been able to announce the next tranche of chapters, which will be as close as possible to a complete map of Africa. So I want to thank the AULIN members across the continent for their passion and for their dedication, and the team in the AU Special Envoy for Women, Peace and Security for giving it their all. And the AU has been a strong support and an enabler in this work, not just in Addis, but across the continent in the different countries where we work. So Anita, Ahuna, you are coming into a very rich fellowship and a community of practice of sisterhood that will be enriched by you coming in with a very well thought out platform and initiative. 2020 was meant to be a super year for women, but COVID took over the world. And like all pandemics, it is affecting women disproportionately, and it is harsher to women and girls. From the role that women are playing, shouldering the response of the pandemic, defending society with their skills and their own lives in the front lines as healthcare workers, as well as caregivers at home to other people who are sick, unable to get care in hospitals that are full. It is affecting women in the informal sector who are also unable to go on with their business because of lockdown in some countries, but also because they also have to be safe. We've seen domestic violence, which has affected women, even worse in countries where the services needed by women in the situation of domestic violence were not declared essential services. Something that I'm asking all of you, whatever country you're in, please make sure that your country declares any service to do with the fighting violence against women an essential service, a shelter, a hotline, services of social workers, etc. And of course, that the police have the relevant protocols to respond appropriately. Women are nurses, they are doctors, they are scientists, they are researchers, they cook in hospitals, they clean and provide hygiene in hospital. They are truly entrenched in the response to COVID, yet they are not in the leadership in many countries, despite women being the majority of the people that are employed in the health sector. This is why we need this platform, because women leaders, women parliamentarians, women politicians need to make sure that this does not happen, that you have a sector that has so many women where women provide life-saving service, and yet they are not being recognized as leaders. And I thank those countries who have made sure that women are positioned strongly in the leadership of the response to the COVID. Women political leaders are needed to come to the table, both to serve their countries, but also to serve the cause of women. There is no woman who is elected in this day and age into politics who can say that they are there because of themselves. They are there because the movement, all of you, all of us have shouldered the possibility to open the space for the women to be there. And when women are in positions, we expect them to continue to fight for other women, because if they don't, there really is a special place in hell for women who don't fight for other women. Women must also roll up their sleeves whenever they're in these positions, because we are judged harshly. We have to do twice the work in order to be recognized in the same way as the men who provide mediocre work. So we also there have to make a difference. We know that young women and girls are already also making a difference in climate change, in politics, in innovation, and in we published recently a paper for parliamentarians on gender-sensitive responses to COVID-19, which highlights the practical ways for MPs and parliamentary staff to ensure COVID-19 response is gender-sensitive. And I would urge you to also look into that and, of course, enhance the debate. And we have continued to work with members of parliament across the world during COVID. In particular, we have been pushing for them not to halt the work of eliminating discriminatory laws, because we have needed to make sure that the laws that address the age of marriage, ending FGM, so, financial inclusion are all being addressed even at this time. And of course, Africa, following Beijing, has been hard at passing legislation. Africa was an exceptional participant in Beijing. In Africa, we have 30 countries that have adopted laws that guarantee quotas to address women's underrepresentation in decision-making. But unfortunately, in Africa, women are just 21.1% members of parliament. The global average is only 21%. So we are all average. So there is work to be done there, and we have legislation. It means that the legislation is not being implemented effectively. We have forged a partnership with women parliamentarians across the party lines, across the aisles in all parliaments, so that a women's caucus works together and works for all women, irrespective of the party they come from. And we have mobilized the he for she's and male allies in different parliaments also to work with us. But I must highlight some of the challenges that women parliamentarians face, and that is the issue of violence against women. We recently did a global study. It is horrendous. Women are subjected to cyberbullying, they are defamed, they experience physical violence, their families are intimidated, they are even assassinated. The numbers are truly shocking. So Ahuna, my dear sister, we really have our work cut out for us here, because as we try to increase the number of women, this violence intimidates and makes women and their families to be afraid. I thank you for this platform, because I think we will be able to mobilize more people to work with us to address all of these stumbling blocks we still have when it comes to supporting women. And of course, as COVID has shown us the many inequalities in our society, we hope that too will form part of the agenda. I'm proud of the work that has been done by Aulin members in countries where there is conflict, responding to the call of silencing the guns and the global ceasefire by the Secretary General. They went in some cases to confront the men in arms and to urge them to lay down their arms. Thanks so much for the courage. And I want to thank my colleague, Awa, who is been our lead in UN Women on the forming of the chapters and continues to do so. And I look forward for her to also work with her. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for this wonderful keynote address. We thank you for it. And now it is my honor to call on a video message from or by His Excellency, the Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission, His Excellency Ambassador Thomas Kwesi Kweti. The video message will be aired immediately. Thank you so much for your attention. I think
Est-ce que les techniciens peuvent nous aider? Il n'y a pas de son, s'il vous plaît. La vidéo n'a pas de son. Si vous pouvez nous aider, s'il vous plaît, nos amis techniciens. Merci.
Angela, could you please advise on the technician who's supporting us with airing this video message, please? No. Angela, we still cannot hear the voice of His Excellency. The message is not clear.
Okay. Apologies, let's start again.
We still cannot hear. Sorry.
Maybe we can go for the next item and come back to the speech of DCP, please, if it is possible.
Angela, could you please advise on this possibility?
Yes, let's go ahead and then we will revisit the video once we get the sound working. Apologies.
All right. Let's do that then. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, now we will move to our first moderated panel discussion. This panel discussion, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, will be on women leaders, experiences, lessons, and policy imperatives for enhanced women participation in governance towards gender parity in leadership, including in the context of COVID-19 response. This one will be moderated by Her Excellency I knew her as or I have known her as a commissioner. So former Commissioner Bianes Guanes. She's also, of course, the Under-Secretary General, Special Advisor on Africa to the United Nations Secretary General. Your Excellency, the time allocated for this session initially was an hour. Unfortunately, with your kind permission, we would like to deduct only 10 minutes from your time. So now the allocated time is only 50 minutes, 50. Thank you so much, Your Excellency.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you very much, Ambassador. I still feel like a commissioner. In fact, when people refer to commissioner, I always still respond as if I am the one that is being referred to. I would like to welcome everyone to this panel session. And we have absolute enough time because there are only about 3 of us on this panel. And 3 or 4 of us on this panel. And I want to start by just introducing myself and to say, when we occupy high office, it's sometimes necessary to share where we were and where we are coming from, especially given that many young men and women are listening to us today. And so I will, rather than introducing my panelists by using a CV, I would like to ask the panelists to start telling us briefly where they were, especially, during the Beijing conference about 25 years ago, but also who are they? Who are they? Who are you? And so can I please start by inviting Her Excellency, the Vice President of the Republic of Liberia, Jewel Howard Taylor, to start by just telling us, who are you?
And I have a small problem. I'm not able to see the video. Can whoever is controlling it check the video picture? All I have is a blank screen. So I'm not sure if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but unfortunately we cannot see you.
Yeah, when he's coming. Okay, one second.
Okay.
While where I'm not too computer literate. I'm learning as we're going along. But
we are all there.
Good morning to everybody. It's actually an honor and a pleasure for me to be with you this afternoon. As a member of Aulen, I know that the responsibilities that we have are huge and the expectations are large. I'm just a regular woman who happens to be chosen by the women of Liberia to serve at this time. I'm a gender activist. I'm a female leader who is a change maker in my generation. And I want to be a part of the real change that we all want to see in our nations. It's been a difficult road, and I think we still have many more difficult roads to cross. But this is an assignment that all of us must put our best foot forward. And if you ask me who Jewel Howard Taylor is, I just want to be one of the many women who continue to PUSH, which is push until something real and tangible happens.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. You are saying that women chose you. Why did they choose you to lead?
I believe I was chosen because I've had years of experience on being a change agent. For many years, I provided empowerment and educational opportunities for girls from 7th to 12th grade and then to the university. So I think over the past 20 years, I might have sent maybe 10,000 or more little girls to school. encouraging them and inspiring them to understand that education is the bedrock for whatever it is we want to do. Not just formal education. If you want to be a pottery maker and you want to make beautiful pots, yours must always be the best. Strive to do the best that you can be in whatever situation you find yourself. And so I engaged women across the country. I tried to be a solution bearer to some of the issues, because we have to remember that we can't do all, and it's easy to get sidetracked. If you have a group of women who want to ensure education for girls, then we must create that barrier where those who are involved in education do education. The ones who will do sexual and gender-based violence are a completely different group, because it takes a different kind of person to be involved in activation for sexual and gender-based violence. If we want to be ones who would help empower our women and girls in entrepreneurship, that takes a whole different set of skills. And so I believe everyone cannot be everything. And so we are many enough to get ourselves in little, batches to help push the agenda in that particular sector. And I chose education because I believe if someone is educated, you teach them how to fish, and then you will no longer have to give them a fish every day. And when I became First Lady, I was 33 years old and I had no clue, but I found myself in a war situation. There was war all around us. Bombs were flying all over the place. Women were stuck in different refugee camps, and it was difficult. And I had to decide, what would I do to make a difference? And so I went into the camps. I inspired them. I think I'm an inspirational speaker. I encouraged them. I led them to believe that one day Liberia would be out of the war. What are we doing to prepare ourselves so that when the war ended, people would be on a keel where they can now push themselves forward? And so I joined many different women in different places across our country, just doing that, providing food, providing blankets, providing items for babies, milk and other things. But I would take time to speak with them and to hear their stories. And I think that inspired them, because most First Ladies before me who had not been in a war, you would have tea parties and invite your friends and you would talk about some things and maybe raise money for little things here and there. But I had to get involved in the process of just giving hope to the women who were caught up in these camps in hopeless situations. And I think they saw that as an angle, and they said, well, if she could do this at 33 years old, in spite of the bullets that were flying and in spite of where the camps were located, if she could come to us and still help us, we believe that if we give her a chance to become a senator, she would do more. And so it was on that first platform that I was elected as senator. And then now as the first female vice president of my country, we thank Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, who laid a lot of platforms that all of us can stand on, but there is still much, much more work that needs to be done.
Thank you very much. It's always what we remember, that we always stand on the shoulders of others. Ambassador Zainab Bangura, my sister, you are known as the Director General of the United Nations Office in Nairobi. But who are you really? Ambassador Zainab, are you there? Can I be informed whether she has joined the panel? If not, can I, whilst
Your Excellency, maybe we can move to the next panel.
Okay, that's fine. My sister, Excellency Amira El Fadil, you have heard the questions that I've been posing to Her Excellency Jewel Taylor. And we all know you as the AU Commissioner for Social Affairs, and we all say you are the face of the COVID response at the African Union. But can you tell us, who are you?
Welcome, Sister Bernice Gawalas, and the former Commissioner of Social Affairs. And I would like also to greet all my sisters here and the organizers of this very important meeting or webinar. My sister Aminata Sasuma, Commissioner for Political Affairs, and also Sister Ahuna, UNDP, and my sister who I looked up to always, my sister Binta Diop, and her work with Aulin, the very successful initiative. We are all consider ourselves a part of this Aulin initiative. And also Madame Fomzili, also nice to see you again. We met a few days ago in another webinar. And to all you sisters here, part of this webinar, the one I see, the one I don't see, all of you, I welcome you and thank you for having me in this meeting. You asked 2 questions, Bernice. You asked me who you are. If I got your questions, who am I? And also where were you 25 years ago? I'm a daughter of Sudan. I'm a daughter of Sudan, and I would like at the very beginning of this talking to appreciate my parents, Gawanis. I would like to appreciate my mother and my father, because for me, the upbringing is the most important beginning of all of us. I grew up in a traditional society. When I was born, the society, and maybe to some extent till today, they favor boys. The first born child to be a boy than a girl. But I was lucky that I was born to an educated man, a teacher, and he was welcoming me as a firstborn. And he gave me the support from the beginning. And I think my father is the one who built my character from the beginning. So I would like to appreciate his role in my life. He's alive today. I pray for his health always and for my mother's health. I think the second issue, Gawanis, is education. Also, education, I got very good chances also in my education. I was in the best schools in the country. Of course, it's public schools, not private schools, but it was very good. My high school, I was in the leading university in the country, which is Khartoum University. I graduated with an honor degree. So I was the kind of the person who likes to be excellent in everything they do. So I always like perfections. I know it is impossible most of the time, but I will always try to do so. I was the top of my class throughout my education till university. I think also because of the complexities also of the political situation in my country. Since the independence of Sudan, we have civil governments and coup d'etats and civil governments and military government. So I was aware of politics very early. And I joined politics when I was in my second year in high school. I started looking for the political parties we have at that time at the school. I chose the political party that speaks to my interest, and I joined, and I'm on the same line since that time. And I joined this political party in 1983. The party changed its name many times, but I'm still with the same political party. When we came as students at the university, we had our chances to go to be part of protests, demonstrations, and I believe during the university, our political characters were built by putting us in confrontations directly with the government at that time. I joined politics since the end as an active person. And I also think I had the chance to be part of the women activism in my country. And the beginning for me is when I joined the General Union, the Sudanese Women General Union. And for me, this is what set me on the path of being a woman activist, on understanding better women issues, on understanding women challenges in my country, and knowing where are the gaps, where are the challenges, because through the Women Union, I came into contact with all the government sectors. I came into contact with our states in Sudan. I traveled all over the country. I met women on different levels. I met women parliamentarians. I met women in the government. I met women on the grassroots level. I think this experience of being part of the biggest civil society organization, women organization in the country, gave me a lot of experiences, and it introduced me also to the women pioneers in my country, those who led the women movement of Sudan. And I'm very proud to say that I dedicated some of my education after that to women movement in Sudan, and I did my master's degree on the role of the Sudanese women in peace building in the country. And through that, and even my research for my honor degree, it's also directed to the role of the women in Sudan. And it gave me the opportunity to know them. It gave me the opportunity to learn from them. Some of them, they led this fight for women's rights at a very difficult time. Some of them, they were imprisoned at some times. So I believe communicating with women leaders also helped me to build myself in this area. After that, governance, I think, work experiences as a Secretary General for the National Council for Child Welfare. It also gave me the opportunity to work on the girls' empowerment, because one of the main issues I led during my term is the fight against FGM. And I was not alone, of course, with some of my colleagues at the NCCW, with civil society organizations, with UNICEF also on my side. We managed to have the first Child Act in Sudan. And this is one of the achievements that I feel proud of, because the Child Act is one of the best child acts in Africa and in the Arab region. Till today, it's implemented. I was part of the establishment of the unit for women and children within the police. I was part of the establishment of 5 child courts in the country. So these are some of the milestones I look at. When I look back, I am proud of. The FGM is a fight of my life. I led it since that time. I led it when I was a minister on the Khartoum level. I led it when I was a minister on the federal level. And but governance, I brought it with me here. And I built what yes, and now we have Salima campaign, which is the Sudan initiative. Then it became a regional initiative. Then it became a continental initiative. And we are implementing Salima campaign now. Not to take most of your time, Gowannes, I think what I was a parliamentarian also. I had the opportunity to be a parliamentarian also. A lot you can learn if you are a parliamentarian. A lot you can learn this. Because
thank you, my sister. We need to move on. I'm still coming back. I'm still coming back to you. This was just really for people to know that it's not the titles that we carry, but it's what we have been doing and what we are bringing with us into our, into our positions. I hope that my sister, Ambassador Zainab, is ready now. Ambassador Zainab, are you ready? If not, then I would want to ask Her Excellency Jewel Taylor, why do we as women need to be at the table? Whose table is it that we want a seat at? And what is it that we bring to this table? Your Excellency.
The table we're talking about,
yes,
is a table that belongs to all of us.
Okay.
Wherever you visit, if you're in a family, there's a family table where we gather around to eat, to discuss issues, to find out what's happening in the family at the different levels, whether you're a child or a mother or a father, to discuss important issues concerning family members. So at the family table, we should be on that table. At the community table, where the issues of whether we have water or light, or whether we have good schools for our children, is a community table. Women should also be at that table. If you're at the national level, that national level should also have women. It has now become accepted that it is one of our fundamental rights. because we make up half of the population of the world. Can you imagine if we would get up one morning and all of the women had disappeared? The world would be uneven. Even God had to stop what he was doing when he made creation. If you go to Genesis, if you're a Christian, it says, and God made everything and he thought it was good. But then he saw man walking up and down and he said, no, there's something wrong. A man should not be alone. Let me make him a helpmate. So the woman was made at the last moment when everything else had been made. So even at the table of where we serve God, women should be represented, because he stopped everything and he said, let us make what? Woman. Someone who came out of man. So from the beginning of creation to where we sit today, every single table must have women representation. If we're not there, then it's incomplete. First thing, we make up 50% of our population. And you cannot silence the voice, the vision, the tenacity, the creativity of half of your population. If you deny women representation, this is what the systems are doing, denying half of the creativity and the strength that we bring to the table. The third thing is that it is just wrong to just exclude people because of their gender. And if you exclude women and say they don't belong at a particular table, then you're excluding half of the population. So we agree that there's a table at every level. We agree that it is a denial of the right of 50% of us who are women to sit at that table and bring our advice, bring our intuition, bring our creativity, which makes the world a better place. It has now been proven over the past few years that in fact, when you deny women a chance to partake in the economy of every country, that country does not develop as fast as it should. So there are empirical evidences that show women are important to the whole process. And so this table belongs to all of us. And if all of us are allowed to come and sit at it and give our advice or give our ideas, then the world becomes a better place. But you know what saddens me most? Who is our first teacher? Our mothers. When that baby is in your stomach, it is the first voice that you hear. When a baby is born, by the time the mother enters the room and speaks, you will see that baby turn his head to where the mother's voice is coming from. So we are the first voice that any child hears. When you're growing up, the baby learns from the mother's voice. It learns to speak. It learns to dress itself. It learns to feed itself. All of the important things that we need as we grow up is taught by the mother. How can we now, when we get to places of trust, we say, oh, the woman is not important, when we are the sustainers of the entire universe by the fact that we bear, sustain, and train our children. So it is totally unfair for us to continue to have a discussion about men allowing us this space when initially, before they knew how to speak, or they knew how to bathe themselves, or they knew how to go to school, your mother takes you to the first day you go to class. So how come they get to the point when they have become adults and they have authority, then they say, okay, you know, let's leave the women in the back. You know, it's gone beyond us just talking about it. I really pray we can find some he for she champions across our world, like Paul Kagame, that will open up the space because they understand what women bring to the table.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I still do not know. Can someone please let me know whether my sister Zainab is back? But if not, I'm informed that we have got Dr. Senator Agyeman Rawlings also as part of our panel. May I please welcome Doctor to join us, and just to really in 1 minute, just tell us who you are so that we can move on with the panel. Dr. Agyeman Rawlings?
Agyeman Rawlings, yes.
Agyeman Rawlings, I'm
That's right.
sorry.
That's okay. Thank you so very much. I'd like to stand on previous protocols and acknowledge the presence of such a special panel, as well as the members of the audience as well. I'm a member of Parliament in Ghana, and this is my first term. Actually, we're gearing up for elections come December. I'm also a trained medical doctor, which was what I was doing before I was more or less dragged into the political space. I grew up in a political family. My father was the president, and my mom was the first lady in Ghana. And so I grew up with that kind of an environment, which I initially meant I was actually trying to stay away from politics. But it kind of crept up on me in the sense that there were certain issues which I realized were difficult to deal with outside of a certain space. And I basically figured that based on trying to address some of these issues, the best way was to actually get into the political space, which led me down the path of getting into the parliament. In parliament in Ghana, we have 275 seats. There are no special seats for women or youth. We have a 13.5, almost 14% of the members of parliament are women. And it's still not high enough. We are very far from where we should be with regards to women representation in politics. I also have a master's in conflict, peace, and security, which I embarked on when I moved back to Ghana, because I've always had an interest, and it seemed quite important because of what we see as a lot of conflict and tension that happens around the times of elections and all of that. And it seemed like a reasonable thing to do because I've done other courses in defense management and women in security as well. In 1 minute, I suppose that's what I could manage to tell you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. I will definitely come back to you for some further questions. But thank you so much for joining us. Afterwards, I will recall a time that I think we met many years ago. I want to turn to my sister, Amira El Fadel. And I want to ask you, you had been, as I said, the face of the covert response at the African Union. But I want to ask you, what are the leadership qualities and values that are needed for an effective covert response?
Thank you, Gowanus. Thank you. You know, Gowanus, we have a lot of women participating in this fight for COVID-19. If I speak on the health workers, there is thousands and thousands of health workers, women, especially nurses, part of this fight. And also there is women on all levels of governments, administrative levels. We have women ministers of health, a quiet number, and I don't recall the exact number, but I believe up to 1/3 of the ministers of health in Africa are women. There is many meetings convened by Binta Diop, by Minata, by others on bringing women together as part of this fight against COVID-19. There is Ministers of Genders meeting, a very successful one. There is Ministers of Foreign Affairs, the women Ministers of Foreign Affairs chaired by the Minister of Foreign Affairs of South Africa. And also it was a very good and powerful meeting. For me, this kinds of meeting, it gives me the support I need. And also there is the women who is working for the United Nations agencies. You and all my sisters working for the UN agencies. I have here with in Addis, Hannah Teti, we have Vera Sonkwe. All of you as women leaders, you supported me in leading this fight against COVID-19. I also got the support of my sisters, the commissioners, the 4 women commissioners. You know, Gowanus, we are 10 elected officials, 5 of us are female commissioners. So the 4 commissioners, Aminata, Sarah, Amani, Josepha, all of us, we are in this fight because what we did, Gowanus, is we developed a comprehensive AUC document. We called it AUC Comprehensive Document on Response on Socioeconomic Impact of COVID-19. When we put the socioeconomic impact of COVID-19, we had all the other departments of the Commission, part of this development of this document. Josepha is leading in the area of nutrition, in the area of agriculture and food security. Aminata leading in the area of elections amid COVID-19. Sarah in science and technology, education issues, and keeping children to be educated from home, lockdowns as a measures. money, infrastructure, cybersecurity, because children, when they go online, they have the risk of being exploited by the sexual molesters or perpetrators. These are the women leadership. It's not just me. Yes, I'm responsible about health, I'm leading, but it's not me alone. I have all my sisters on my side, on the level of the commission, on the level of member states, and even the women ambassadors, Gawanas here, they feel that they have to support me. We have this women connection, all of us, we have it in us. So when you see a woman, you see, okay, I need to support her, I need to push her. So it is me leading it, I'm the face of it, but with the help and support of all the women leaders we have in Africa. Awlin also is very active, all the women participants in Awlin, our women who are in the highest government posts, like Madam Taylor now, the Vice President of Liberia, and all of my sisters who have political positions through it, they can support my fight and the fight of Africa CDC. I thank them all, Gawanas.
Yeah, but what is it? What, you know, what, if one looks
the
at
the qualities needed, I will tell you some of it.
Yes.
First, you have to be very persistent, and you have, I will say it frankly, you have to nag. You have to be a nagging person. You have not to accept no as an answer. And you have to be a visionary leader. And the most important thing, Gawanas, you have to believe that you can do something. You have to believe that a change, and myself, I'm a very optimistic person. And amid this crisis, I have to stay optimistic. I wake up in the morning to tell myself that I can do something. I can do something. I can mitigate the harm. I can reduce the morbidity in Africa. I can reduce the mortality in Africa. If I don't have this inside me, I will be frustrated. I will see it happening that big countries are failing to deal with this COVID-19. Big economies are failing. How come we in Africa with all our, no. I have the belief that we can do it as Africa. We have all the means. We have the will of our political leaders, and we have the technical institution needed for this fight against COVID-19. So I think believing in ourselves is a very thing needed in the quality of the leader at this time. Being persistent, never to be disappointed, to work with your leaders. This is also for me a very good quality. How to communicate with your boss, how to communicate with your principals, how to make them always informed, how to update them with the information, how to bring them back part of what you are doing is very much needed.
Is there, I mean, what I hear about the women leaders that have been driving a very effective COVID response is just the, it's just the humanity, the empathy, the passion. Are those not qualities that are also important?
They are qualities. It's the heart, your heart. Because yes. I said, when I spoke about reducing morbidity and mortality, because you have it in your heart. As a mother, you don't want to lose your son. As a daughter, you don't want to lose your father to COVID-19. You don't want to lose any family member because of COVID-19. You don't want to lose it while you can have the means to prevent it. So I think I agree with you, Gawanas. These are qualities also very much needed. We as women, Gawanas, not only me, all of us, we work with passion. We are very passionate about our work. It's not just a job. We go in 8 o'clock in the morning and go back at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. No, we sleep with it. We wake up with it. We think in the middle of the night about it. We keep it in our heart. We don't stop by the working hours. I think that's what gives us the opportunity to succeed.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to turn to Dr. Agyeman Rawlings. You know that there's a demand, or maybe a gentle reminder to us, that youth also wants to be at the table. They also want to co-lead. You are there. I mean, I am obviously much older than you are, so I'm looking at you as a youth, representing the youth voice. Can you tell me, what does it mean for youth to co-lead, especially in the response to COVID?
I suppose I'm having to look at it from several perspectives, because as a medical doctor, there's that medical background that I have. As a woman and as a mother, I have that as well. And then as a youth in your eyes, although now I feel like I have a generation below me now, so I'm not quite sure where to place myself. But definitely I think some of the important qualities are the ability to see people as people, not to see them as one ethnic group first, or to see them as one political party first, but to see them as people, all of whom are at risk when it comes to this disease. And the ability to be transparent, because one of the issues that we're facing is the fact that there is a bit of suspicion amongst people. As I go out and I speak to people, a lot of people don't believe that COVID exists, because they're not seeing a sense of this level of extra precaution. And so a lot of people think it's not serious. And I think one of the other things is the importance of persistence of a message. Most habits take on average 21 days to actually be, ingrained. So you can't expect people to suddenly change their habit. In a culture where we love to sit around, we love to hug, we like to hold hands and hug and talk, and funerals are a big thing, and going to church and going to the mosque. All of these are part of our existence. And to suddenly expect people to give a distance of 1 meter or 2 meters from one another, to be wearing masks, it's very much against our way of life. And so just persisting, but also breaking the message down into tangible bits of information that are not so abstract that people think this doesn't affect me. And so the ability to translate a very medical situation or scientific situation into something that is easily understandable by the person with the least bit of education, with the average person who does not know why the coronavirus is called corona because of the shape, or does not understand the pathology of the disease, or how the body reacts. Being able to break down the importance of why we need to build our immune systems and all of that, not the overemphasis on the scientific jargon, breaking it down. I worked in GP, so as part of my training, as part of working, you learn not to use medical terms too much, because you need the person you're speaking to understand. And the only way to empower people is to give them that full understanding and the knowledge. So the ability to share that knowledge and impart it. It's been a bit frustrating, because we have a lot of young people in Ghana. I think Ghana, like the rest of the continent, with over 60% of our population in the youth demographic, is we're having too many people make it a stigma, or a negative connotation, whereas it's an opportunity for us to build a force of nation builders, of change makers with a new vision. So with that as well, we must have the ability to also bring on board that collaborative and cooperative spirit, where we have a joint vision of what we want to see our country as, the way those who fought for our independence had a joint vision, even though they were from different jurisdictions. We need to, as youths, not just in our countries, but across the various borders, across the Anglo-Franco divide, and every other, divide that there is, artificial or otherwise, on the continent, to have that understanding of where we want the continent to be, how we want to achieve that, break it down into easy steps that we can perhaps adapt to the various communities, to the various societies where we find ourselves, and that willingness to collaborate and to be a listener as well. No doubt what the other panelists have mentioned with regards to the empathy is a big deal, because the majority of our frontline workers here, especially the nurses, are women, and just the ability to balance that, the risk that they're facing at work with what's happening at home. All of these are important, as well as recently as this week, 2 days ago, the schools were reopened for the final year students, which has added a whole new dimension to the risk that we're expecting to see. in this era of the pandemic. And it's not something that we can deal with in a linear fashion. It's something that will really require us to have a multifaceted approach, because we must also ask, how do the children get to the school? The commuter routes that they're using? Are the drivers observing the protocols? Because otherwise what you're doing is endangering teachers and staff who have otherwise been kept in a certain environment. And now in coming to schools, they are dealing with people who are not necessarily observing the protocols and all of that. So, and that of course has security implications, you know, with when we had the lockdown briefly, one of the issues we had was in the non-formal sector. We have a lot of women who migrate from the northern parts of the country to the cities to work as porters. And even though they are not recognized formally, they actually contribute a huge portion to the commerce that happens within the cities because of the job that they do. Now, so what happened in some cases was when the lockdown happened, a lot of them couldn't make their way back. And just trying to manage the situation where these people, as you know, have a subsistence kind way of life, which means that if they're not working, they don't get food, and once they don't get money, they can't buy food. It became a bit of a complicated situation, and so the lockdown, of course, was I think it was over a bit sooner than we had anticipated, because of some of these reasons, because of the huge non-formal sector in which you have a lot of youth, you know, a lot of youth who are in that particular demographic. So it's been quite tricky trying to balance that whole, you know, and then you have a lot of unemployed young people. It created a lot of tension where now people had no means of making a living, and then even sports became an issue because there was a restriction. We had an executive instrument that imposed a restriction on a lot of things, including, you know, sporting activities and all of that. So you had a situation where a lot of tension was building up with no clear way on how we could diffuse this. And it really became a case of really going through the communities, engaging the youths and encouraging them to manage the situation, follow the protocols, as we watched and hopefully watched this flattening of a curve, which we're still hoping to see. But it's complicated.
And I know that you are a doctor, but also a politician, and you know, someone that really shows the passion. And that was what I was asking. I'm sorry that I always end up on panels that are only women panels, but you can see the passion that comes out of it, especially when we are talking about the COVID response. There is a question we need to round up, but there is and I think it's a very important question. What do political parties do to promote gender equality? And this is very important in the sense that we are always talking about democratic societies. Democratic governance. But how many of us are asking ourselves the questions about democratic governance within political parties themselves? Is there anyone on the panel that want to respond very quickly to that question before we end up? There is another question, but it's in French. Maybe someone can help me to
Can I take the political party one?
Okay, very briefly, my sister.
I think in the political parties, we still have a big problem in Africa, because women, they call them to vote, but to have them in the senior positions in the political parties, it is a challenge. So the political parties now, I don't want to generalize, I know only in my country, Sudan, maybe Aminata has the full picture, but from my experience, it's not easy for women to be given decision-making roles within the political parties. And we have to push for it. We have another challenge, to go honest, that sometimes women, they don't support women within the political parties. So this also needs, it needs to be addressed, maybe through the political affairs department. We can lead efforts, we can share with Aminata our experiences, but I think this is one of the decision-making areas we need to work on it. Unless we are very powerful within the political parties, we will not be able to have decision-making positions within the governments when they are formulating governments. Thank you.
If I may add to that, with the issue of women's participation within the political parties, we need to have a deliberate policy in place within the parties, because there isn't. And you have situations where there are women who are representing the parties in various constituencies. The party runs primaries and the women are voted out and replaced by men. So we're not even seeing that level of equity where women are replaced with women. We're just seeing the reality is we can't proceed without having that balance forcibly put back, in the sense that it won't happen by default. So we need to look at a case of some form of perhaps affirmative action sort of thing within the political party so that it translates. Because unless you can get the women elected at the primaries level, you can't have the chance of women running for those seats at the general election for them to actually enter parliament, for example. And this should not just happen within the political parties. It needs to happen across board, corporate society, across the civil sector and everything else, because we are really not seeing enough women. And that figure as it is being left. We also need to look at the reasons why not enough women are going into these, like the gender balance and women not having facilities where they can actually look after their children when they are working.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, I thought we had a lot of time, but I think the conversation was just great, and I really need to conclude. And I would like to conclude with the following thoughts that I had. I think when I look at all of you on this panel, your lives started off as being activists. And I think it's the activism that you are bringing with you into your positions that make you to be able to respond to the demands out there. The last thought that I had also is that the route to political power is through the parties. And unless we address the democracy within our political parties, it will be very difficult to get people into parliament or to get people, women into positions. So let's not just look at the president when he appoints, but let us look at the political parties and the levels at which women operate within the political parties. I would like to thank each one of you for being such amazing panelists and for sharing with young men and women out there actually who you are, because that is what makes us becoming the leaders that we are. So thank you once again. And thank you to my sisters, Kumsile, Ahuna, Simana, Binta, for allowing me to moderate this panel this morning. I wish you all the best, and nothing can stop us from achieving what we want to. Nothing can stand in our way.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Let me hand back to you.
Thank you for being a wonderful moderator. Thank you.
Thank you. Ambassador.
Thank you so much.
Ambassador, can I just land with one thought before you come in? It's so important, because I know Madam Ajiman Rawlings spoke about the fact that we need to change the systems. The truth is also that when women get brought on board at the political party level, they just sit. Can you imagine you have an opportunity to serve as a vice chairperson for rules and order, and nothing comes from your desk? You don't even engage in the conversations. That's why men say sometimes, oh, the women are playing. So as we look at the political activation on one side, whether there are rules for gender equity, all of those things will come into play. How do we, as women, once given these opportunities, push to the very end until the changes are made? And I just wanted to say it's a two-sided sword. It's not just one-sided. The laws, for example, in Liberia, the laws state that we should have women on board. So they brought about maybe 10 women in my political party. I asked the standard bearer of the party, and the only woman you will find at all of the meetings. You will call someone and they'll say, oh, you know, this isn't important. I have to go to do this and I have to go to do that. We must also look at the other side. And I'm so sorry for jumping in, but thank you. It's been an amazing morning.
Thank you so much. Ambassador. Thank you so much, Your Excellency. And thank you so much, Madam Goanis, for wonderful moderation. I totally understand and agree that the topic is extremely important and the discussion is extremely rich. But let me just conclude by saying that 3 countries that have done extremely well in fighting the COVID-19 in the world, and the 3 countries are led by women. So therefore, as a he for she, I'm extremely convinced that the world could be a better place if our leaders are women. Thank you so much for a wonderful panel. And before we move to the next panel, I would like to seek your indulgence, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, to have a brief presentation, 10 minutes presentation of the action plan to promote women's equal parties representation, the action plan to promote women's equal representation and participation in governance. This action plan is currently, or it has been developed by the Department of Political Affairs of the African Union Commission in close collaboration with UNDP. I would like to call on Angela, my colleague Angela Luisgi from UNDP to deliver this action plan. Angela, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Ambassador Salah. I hope you can see my screen and you can hear me clearly. Thank you. Thank you. Excellencies, honorables, for the sake of time, I stand on the protocols observed. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to present on behalf of the joint working group between the African Union and UNDP that has been supporting this initiative. I think it will be very brief because much has already been said. Our starting point is really the fact that we have such a wide diversity when it comes to political leadership across Africa, from the best performing country, which is a global lead, Rwanda, to the least performing country. So there's such a wide gap. So we believe that a continental effort, apologies, I need to mute this. So we believe that a continental effort can promote a development exchange between countries to close the gap. And you can see that we have a lot of countries that are doing well and a lot of countries that are not doing well, but we really need that collaboration to come across and to close that gap. We also understand that there's the gap in political leadership cannot be looked at away from the gap in public and private sector government. So therefore, we feel that it is very important to look at this together, and which is why when we look at some of the things that this action plan is going to do, we're also looking at issues around data. How can we track progress at all levels? Now, the action plan is meant to strengthen the ecosystem for women in governance. A lot of times, we tend to look at underlying causes. You know, we say it's a matter of access to resources, it's a matter of skills and gaps, it's a matter of discriminatory institutions, but we need to address the root causes. And the panel that has come before us has really emphasized the fact that we have legislation in place, it's not being implemented. We have few opportunities for mentorship and education and experience for women leaders. We have patriarchal systems that perpetuate gender stereotypes. And we also have low levels of economic empowerment and social mobilization. So unless we address these root causes, which are all interlinked, we will not be able to see the outcome that we would like around the representation of women in public leadership, private sector leadership, and also in the policy space. Now, we also look at what is happening with COVID, and it has been mentioned, it's a multi-dimensional crisis, and gender intersects with all other levels of discriminatory and vulnerability. So gender intersects with age, intersects with power, intersects with occupation and wealth. And really, this is the time to see how we can harness women's leadership to be able to effectively address this multi-dimensional crisis. So I'm not going to go into the specific details on the plan because this was distributed before. I will just talk about the main pillars. So the first pillar is around leadership capacity development, especially for emerging leaders. Here we're looking at not only in the COVID response, but also beyond the COVID response? How can we look at mentorship and training models? How can we create the networks that are needed for people to be able to come together to look at leadership in both the public and the private sector? And how can we help what is already ongoing on the ground? The second pillar is around access to financing and technical resources for women leaders. And here we're looking at the tools and the guidance. We're looking at, as we heard from the panel before us, what are the best practices? What have we learned and what can we scale up? And also strengthening the capacity of women's groups and candidates in being able to access not just financing, but also digital and technology resources, because this is critical for the leadership into the future. The third pillar is really around implementation. Why do we have these policies and laws that are not being implemented? One of the first things that we'd like to do is to make sure that we can track progress, we can name and shame, but then we can also work with different systems. There was a discussion about political parties. How do we work with political parties? How do we work with electoral oversight institutions in order to make sure that what is in place is being implemented, and where there's a gap, that the laws and legislation can be in place to facilitate that. The fourth pillar is really the elephant in the room. It's around reducing discrimination and changing the perception of women in leadership. And here there's a very big role with media and also engagement with thought leaders, community leaders, because this is definitely something that really speaks to the heart of why we don't see more women standing up for leadership and even the perception about women as leaders. And I'm very happy that the panel before spoke about now the evidence about what happens with women's leadership that is confident, that is compassionate, that is collaborative in really achieving the response to COVID that we would like to see. Then the fifth pillar is around sustaining peace and violence prevention. We know in the electoral process, which is not just what happens at elections, it's what happens even in between, we need to be able to address the situation around violence against women, including sexual and gender-based violence, and new forms of violence, including digital violence, for instance, because we know that once women have access and they're on digital platforms, they tend to get a lot more violence directed against them, shaming, and so on. So in brief, just to close, Ambassador, I know we are short of time. I just wanted to highlight that we had a virtual consultation last week where a lot of issues were raised, which are aligned, very much aligned to the direction of the action plan. And we're going to make sure that these are reflected into the action plan for completeness. Under the area of leadership capacity for emerging leaders, there was a very strong push to support young women leaders in politics and even before they get into politics. And also to see how we can work and support the experience from African women in the diaspora and also the solidarity within the women movements to make sure that we can move the agenda to a higher level. As was mentioned also, the focus is also not on women just being part of the agenda, but owning and setting the agenda. The second area around financing and technology was very interesting because we definitely talked about having the skills to mobilize financing, and also how can we support the setting up of special funds for women in leadership to make sure that women have access to the resources that they need. But we also felt that it's important to also focus on transformational digital skills and also access to existing COVID financing. In the area of tracking and promoting country implementation of legislation, there was a big push to support the reform of political parties, electoral reforms for full rights, not just token representation, and also the fact that we need to carry society along and make sure that we're generating the consensus and the alliances that we need to be able to make sure that the agenda moves forward. In the area of discrimination and changing perceptions, very much around work with communities and the media, as was mentioned earlier, in order to dismantle what we call the ecosystem of discrimination, because we know that there's intersectionality. So we need to look at the level of how we can make sure no woman is left behind, and addressing issues of marginalized women. And then finally, in the area of peace and violence prevention, we were also really focused on the fact that there are elections happening during this COVID crisis, and making sure we ensure women's participation and leadership, and also addressing campaign violence, working with electoral observer missions, and overcoming violence in all its forms. And thank you. I'll stop there, Ambassador. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Angela, for this wonderful presentation. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, there is a great engagement that is taking place currently on social media at two hashtags. The first one is Women Together for Africa, number 4, Women Together for Africa, and African Women Lead, African Women Lead. So please follow the conversations as we go on this or at these both hashtags. Now, without any further delay, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we'll move to our second panel discussion, moderated panel discussion on national actors, country perspectives on women in governance and political participation, challenges, opportunities, and proposals for the way forward. This panel will be moderated by Her Excellency, Ms. Hannah Tete, and the Secretary General and a Special Representative of the Secretary General to the African Union and Head of the United Nations Office to the African Union. Your Excellency, the original time allocated for this session was an hour, but because we are running out of time, unfortunately, now the new allocated time is only 40 minutes. Thank you so much. You have the floor, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much, Thank you very much, Ambassador. Your Excellency, Commissioner Samate, my colleague, ASG Ahuna, Ezioka, Excellencies, may I stand on existing protocols and bring the session to a start, because as you've just been informed, we don't have that much time. But I think the second panel discussion is very important as regards the implementation of this policy and this action plan that the African Union and UNDP want to be able to put together to support the participation of women in politics. And this is really where the rubber meets the road. And so I would very much like the panelists in this session not to talk so much about what you have done, because I'm sure that you've all done fantastic work. But I want you to be able to look at what the concept note that was sent to you proposes in terms of this action plan that the African Union and UNDP want to present. And I want you to be able to comment on that and see how best this can be implemented in a way that is relevant within your cultural, political, and national context. When you look at the data on the women who have been able, or the countries that have been able to have significant participation of women in politics, one of the things that stands out, especially if you take a country like Rwanda as an example, is that these are countries where there is a national vision to craft an inclusive national identity. And so one of my questions to you would be, how do we help you within a country context to be able to craft that inclusive national identity that of course also includes gender and youth as an important part of that process? What do we do to be able to get the political parties to move from legislation to implementation? How do we ensure that we are able to build coalitions of women who are interested in putting gender on the agenda and making sure that there is indeed a gender perspective that feeds into all of our political processes, policies, and legislation, so that we can truly see change begin to happen? How do we build those networks between political actors, civil society, academia, the private sector, so that those policies that translate into legislation then actually are implemented to have the desired outcomes? I know that it's a lot to do within 40 minutes, and because I'm asking you to think of the how as opposed to the what, so that we can be very, very concrete in our suggestions. And I hope that this is going to give us some very useful inputs that will help us to flesh out this strategy and make it more relevant across the continent. So I'd like to start by inviting the Executive Director of the Women's Democracy Network of Uganda, Madam Perry Ariza. I hope I've got your pronunciation right. Representative of national chapters, and I give you the floor.
Thank you, Your Excellency. There are a number of questions and I'll just try to summarize them. As the Women's Democracy Network Uganda chapter, we are part of the Uganda Women's Network, because the Uganda Women's Network is the umbrella organization of women's rights organizations that really do a lot of advocacy and work to ensure that women are equally represented with men in different spheres of life, including politics, economy, and the social sector. So UONET brings together women organizations and also individuals who address different aspects of gender inequality in the different spheres of life. So just back to the questions that you asked, one of them was, how do we get parties to move from legislation to implementing gender responsive policies? I think it's important to also understand that legislation provides the bedrock, but most of the political parties, even when they have the right laws and policies, some of them are not trained on gender. They don't know why equality matters. They don't even know what to do to ensure that the policies then get translated into practice. So I think training for party leaders, especially at the levels of the national the national executive committees, which are usually the highest level of decision making, is very important, because they are responsible for policies, they're responsible for ensuring that the budgets are approved. So it's important that they are given capacity to understand gender, to see the importance of gender and the benefits for a political party which is gender responsive. I think that is crucial. The other is to ensure that we expose the best practices, because there are parties who have made certain strides in terms of enhancing gender equality. So it's important that those who have done well, are encouraged to do better, and that the practices that they have adopted are shared with the others who are still struggling. I'll give you a simple example in Uganda. Some of the political parties have adopted affirmative action within their party constitutions to ensure that more women are elected into leadership within the party structure. But there are those who have not done that. So you see, when you have legislation, it is easier to then move from legislation to practice. So even if we're saying let's move to implementation, it's important that that bedrock is also clear. The other is to continue to track how they are implementing what they have adopted in terms of policy. Because, for instance, as an organization, we work quite closely with the political parties here in Uganda. So you'll find that they may have, some of the parties have adopted, let's say, a 40% affirmative action in their constitutions. But when you start tracking practice and policy, the two are not in tandem, because the law is there, but the practice still shows that there are gaps. And then we also have to bear in mind that the funding for some of the political parties is hardly there. So when they get money, women are not a priority, because one, they don't understand gender, they don't understand the importance of having women and men participating equally, but they also don't have the resources that they need to support all the different leagues, including the youth league and the women's league. Now, the other is for them to also understand principles like gender responsive budgeting, so that even when you get limited resources, you're able to allocate those resources to the different strands within the political party. The other question that you raised is, how do we get the networks? You talked about networks. How do we strengthen networks with the private sector and with other actors who are crucial to women's empowerment and gender equality? I think one is to get champions, people who are already doing something to ensure that gender equality is practiced within their institutions, and usually identifying people of influence becomes very important. For instance, in Uganda, UN Women has worked with the Cultural Institution of Uganda, which is quite a strong cultural institution, and some of the statements that the Kingdom of Uganda has made on women's rights become easier to sell to ordinary citizens, because that is the institution that for them that's the institution they identify with. So identifying influencers within the institutions, exposing good practices within some of these institutions, but also exposing the benefits of gender equality and adherence to women's rights becomes very, very, very important. The other is, how do we get a gender perspective to be put into all policies? Of course, a lot of advocacy is required here. And we also know that before we do advocacy, it's important to do research. So research and documentation become important even as we attempt to do advocacy to ensure that gender perspective is included in all policies that are being made by government, by institutions, but also holding institutions accountable, because Uganda's constitution talks about gender equality, it talks about equal treatment for men and women, So really calling leaders out when they do not respect the constitution and the policies that are in place becomes important. Let me stop here for now because of time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Perry, for making the effort, and I think that you really gave it your best shot. Is the Deputy Minister for Information, Communication and Technology with us, Honorable Emma Theophilus? I saw an indication initially that she might not be here. If she is not, then in that case, can I invite the Member of Parliament from Tanzania, Her Excellency Upendo Furaha Peneza. But before the Member of Parliament starts with her contribution, I'd just like to make the point that some of the things that you've talked about, Perry, are indeed things that we know need to be done. The question really is, how do we help you to get it done within the context of a country situation? What specifically would need to be done under the implementation of this action plan to make it happen for you? Now, political parties don't offer participation on a silver platter.
Mm-hmm.
It never happened, and it hasn't happened across the continent. Neither do they necessarily take on issues that we consider important from a gender perspective if there isn't momentum behind those initiatives. So the question for me really is, how do we make that happen? And I'm not speaking about these things from a perspective of asking you very general questions. I have been an elected member of parliament myself before. I was elected for the first time when I was 33. I understand the challenges of young people in politics. I understand the challenges of women in politics. That's the reason why I'm asking the question of the how. So now I would invite the Deputy Member of Parliament, Upendo Furaha Peneza, to make her contributions. You have the floor, madam.
Yes. Hello.
Hello. Hi, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Yes. Yes. On the same note, on the women participation and the good governance, there's one point in which the women themselves should actually. It's more of them putting themselves ready and to act in order to be elected. That is. There has to be, first of all, an interest of women themselves to be empowered and to actually participate and to be present within the political parties so that in the cases where we are actually trying to find spaces for women to participate, then they should actually be available. There have been cases even within the political parties whereby we've been campaigning for women, but women who are actually ready to stand for particular positions within the political parties. That has been a bit of a challenge. And in another way, in order to have a more number of women in terms of participation, this has also to be put as in a legal framework. Like, for instance, in my country, Tanzania, our constitution spells it very right that we have the women's seats, and this is more of like an affirmative action, but women are also able to stand within the various constituencies. But when we were writing the new constitution, which we haven't finished yet, there has been a push of having constitution, not having women just as an affirmative action, but to be provided within the constitution that women can actually stand within the constituencies, and they can be marked exactly that where exactly can women stand. But that has been more of a challenge, because the public finds it that we cannot name specific kind of constituencies just for women, to assign them for women, that this has to be these have to be constituencies that have to be competed for by everybody. So now the question comes in is having the women having women and empowering them to actually be able to compete. Because even if the constitution may spell that way, because for now we are more protected by the constitution by having the 30%. That is on the affirmative action. But if the constitution just tells you that, okay, the constitutions are out there without the limitation or without proper governance of how these constitutions will be distributed, then we'll definitely have a low number of women who will be sitting within the parliament or in other decision-making bodies. Hello?
Yes, go on.
Yes, and on another part that I would really love to talk about is more of the women groups that we do have in our communities. To say, for example, like the women, like for instance, like the women organizations that we do have within the organizations. It's more of training of women within the community. And as we train those women within the community, we prepare them for leadership. Like for instance, in my area, we have been having women that we've been training them. For instance, where I come from at the local level, we've been training women at the local level to come into other positions whereby they can vie. So we have been training them, capacitating them, and also helping them in how they can raise funds in order to stand for the various positions. So we're having elections this year. So like in my area, we have more women who have come up to run as councillors in those areas out of the trainings that we have done. So, and another part that is very important as we women who have gotten a chance is when we get into office, what do we actually do that promotes a need of the community to find there is an importance of having women representatives in our area. That is also very important. That when we become leaders, when we become MPs, when we become councillors, what do we do that can actually help to change the perception of the communities, in order for the community to feel like they can actually vote for women and they can see the importance of women in this decision-making body. That is also very important, because sometimes we get into the positions of power, but what do we do? Does it really communicate to the need of having more women in power? Do we speak for the women? Like, for instance, in my country, whereby we do have women representatives. When one is a woman representative, do you cater for the needs and the challenges that women face in the communities, or you just stay in the parliament and nothing exactly that you're doing for the public? So I believe there's something more that can actually change the perception of our people, and we can change the perception of our people by what we are doing. So if, for instance, we have had women who have been presidents in other countries, what they have done, that has also helped to change perception in other areas. When you're a member of parliament in your area, what do you do that actually changes the perception of the community so that we can feel the need of having more women into power? But that does not only change into the perception of having the male and all that in order to vote or to want more women in power, but this can actually also push for the young generation to come into power. I got into parliament when I was a young girl, but I've now grown, I'm soon growing off the youthful age. And but I do believe what I have done in Parliament for my 5 years has actually has planted a seed into the lives of other young women to feel like they are capable, they can run, they can compete, and they can actually vie for various positions into office. So there's a lot that we can play as women in our responsibilities, but as we are running our day-to-day activities, as we also push for the changes of the legal framework, and also the changing of the perceptions within the community that has to be done more by the NGO people, but has to be done by the NGO people, the political organizations, in order to change the perceptions of the public so that they can feel that they can actually vote for women and women can be leaders within their communities.
Thank you very much, Upendo. So if I put together the contributions made by both Perry and yourself, essentially, the position is that we should be looking to have affirmative action that allows for specific quotas, if you like, for women's participation to guarantee a seat at the table in the governance. We should add to that the importance of training, both for the political parties, for them to see the value added in having women participating in governments and looking at things from a gender perspective. We need, as you have shown by example in Tanzania, to be able to provide the benefit of training for women to be able to participate in politics, starting right from the level of local government and working their way up, because it doesn't necessarily all have to be starting from the point of entering into the legislature. But we also need to be able to support, and this is the inference I make from some of the statements that you've made, we also need to be able to support women who get elected in order that they can demonstrate the value added by having women participating in governance. And I think that those are important takeaways for the implementation of the action plan so that we can actually see some of these things happening in real time. I'd like to invite now the executive director.
But just one note, an affirmative action, it is a starting point. It is a starting point. Like for instance, in Tanzania, we have 30% of the parliament should be of women nominated. These are nominated members of parliament. That is a starting point. But when you check like what is happening in the country now, the public is actually questioning, because not all the 30% are actually very active in parliament. So the public wants the women to be voted for. So this is a starting point, and it's very important if women or members of parliament, we have these organizations, the parliamentary caucuses, that are actually helping women to perform so well, so that their presence in the parliament becomes meaningful, because that's the starting point. But then we have to grow out of the affirmative action in areas whereby women can actually compete. So this is an affirmative action is more of a starting point. It is a point whereby we are changing the perception of the public. We are changing our communities who are not believing that women can be leaders. So we are changing that with the affirmative action. Then after the affirmative action, we have to grow into having a proper legal mechanism within the constitutions, where actually women can compete in the constituencies. Then they are protected in terms of the percentage, in terms of percentage. So we don't say like let them go just compete in the constituencies without protecting them. So we're giving the affirmative action starting point. Then we have to grow.
Okay, I'll come back. No, hold on.
Yes.
I'll come back to you because I want the other participant also to, but I'll give you a couple of questions because I take issue with some of your points. But let me now invite the Executive Director of Akina Mamawa Africa, Ms. Eunice Musime, representing Gender is My Agenda, to also make her contributions. Eunice, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Excellency. And like previous speakers, I stand on the protocol or existing protocol. Thank you. It's an honor and privilege to be part of this very important conversation. Thank you for the reframed questions, and I will make my input based on a power analysis of a way forward. We thank God for the feminist movement that has come up with expressions of power that include power over, power with, power to, and power within. So I would like to say, in terms of implementing the action plan, this is an analysis that can help us move forward. When we think about power over, a lot of the previous speakers have mentioned how, as well, women have expressed power negatively, without the acknowledgement that any member of a powerless group, once they come into power, they are likely to replicate the same model that they have seen exercised. So we need to begin creating spaces that can help us to unlearn some of these expressions of power that we have seen for centuries, so that we can begin to imagine new forms of leadership that are then more empowering, are more collaborative, are more empathetic, as previously stated. So, and also are happy to ensure that everyone on the table is influencing decisions. I'll also speak to the other expression of power, which is power with. A lot of the times we brought women in this space and they struggle on their own. So we need, again, these spaces where women can build their power with. That is power with others, with other women to begin with, before they can expand to other allies, i.e. men and other influencers. So spaces where they can build that collective strength, find common ground, support each other, find that mutual support. Oftentimes there's a stereotype that women do not support each other, but enough hasn't been invested in ensuring that women actually find that mutual support. And then of course, power, and also of course multiply their individual talents and knowledge within such spaces. So power with can help to build bridges across different interests and transform the negative social norms. Then the other expression of power is power to. Of course, this is the power to act. The Vice President of Liberia talked about the fact that some women come into the space and they're not able to act. And so going forward with the action plan, of course, we also want to ensure that the women are able to act. So of course, once women are capacitated to act, then they can draw on their unique potential as a person, call on their greatness, and be able to shape the world, their own world first, but then also the world around them. So the power to act is something that we also need to invest in. And of course, power to act is also closely related to power within, which is someone's deep sense of self-worth and self-knowledge. We all know one of the barriers to women's political participation and leadership is the lack of confidence. We cannot trivialize that it is a factor in Africa. So building that power within helps women to be able to understand their sense of self-worth and self-knowledge, and the fact that they can also compete effectively in these spaces. Just as COVID-19 has shown us that women can lead once given the opportunity. So I think going forward, that power analysis is also useful. I also would like to speak to the issue of monetization of politics. Across Africa, politics or getting into power has become very expensive. And then, so it's time to really look at how this issue can be addressed more concretely. There has to be a redistribution of resources in terms of property, in terms of pay gap, in terms of women's unpaid care work that restricts women from not having enough resources to be able to compete effectively. That's before, of course, we have reforms in terms of our public finance to ensure that politics are funded publicly and resources are made available, and therefore women do not have to find alternative means to access resources. Finally, I just want to speak to the issue of internalized sexism. It has been spoken over and over in this conversation that women as well have failed other women, but we all live in a patriarchal society. We've been socialized the same. And therefore, unless we unlearn the patriarchal social norms, as women too will be able to advance the patriarchy. So there's a need to also invest a lot in ensuring that women themselves unlearn the sexism as well, and therefore then can build the power with that is required. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eunice. So if I summarize now the three of you, Eunice, you made an important point about the need for women who want to participate in governance and politics to be able to build their self-confidence and to be supported to be able to act. And I agree with that. And I think that's part of the reason why this action plan is formulated, to be able to help to see how women's leadership capacity can be strengthened. But to the three of you, and I want to give you just 2 minutes each to respond to that, because as you know, we don't have that much time. And so I'd like you to respond with the first idea that comes to your head, which you think is the most important idea. We know that we live in patriarchal systems. We know that politics is participation in partisan politics, which is what we have across the length and breadth of this continent, is an expensive exercise. We know that people don't vote for you just because you're a woman. People vote for you because you're a woman, especially believing that that is going to add value at the end of the day in terms of your participation in government. So Perry, Upendo, Eunice, for each of you, if you were to make a contribution right now to the development of the action plan, and you were to put across from your perspective, what is the most important thing that UNDP and the African Union working together can do to support the meaningful participation of women in politics in such a way that their constituencies see that they are bringing value to the table? What would that be? 2 minutes each. Perry, starting with you.
For me, the most important thing would be to really expose our society to what exceptional women leaders have done, not only on the continent, but in other countries, so that our citizens see that it is possible for women to make a positive contribution to their lives, regardless of their gender. Thank you.
Thank you, Perry. Upendo, what about you? What do you think? Upendo, are you with us? If not, Eunice, let me give you the floor. What do you think would be the one most important thing?
Thank you. I agree with Perry. What she has shared is quite important, but I would also add that we need to create spaces for women to begin building that collective power, to ensure that they are able to reflect, to connect at that personal level and build that collective political vision. So the capacity building, I would add to capacity building, deepening political consciousness. And that's when our constituency can begin to see the value that women bring to the table. Thank you.
Okay. So Upendo, I can see you are back. If you were to, I'm sure you heard my question. What's the most important thing that you think that this partnership can do to be able to strengthen the participation of women in politics? 2 minutes.
I think we should actually push for different countries to have a proper legal framework that provides for women participation, and secondly, a legal framework that actually protects the women who stand for various positions. And by doing that, we'll be creating a conducive environment for these women to stand. So it is one thing to actually safeguard the seats for them, but it's another thing to actually have laws that actually speak against abusive languages that may be used during campaigns, sexism, as that has been mentioned. All that will actually help women, and will have a conducive environment for women to stand for positions in various areas.
Okay, well, let me thank the three ladies for their contributions. I didn't get to see Eunice on the screen, but I can see that Perry and Upendo are both young ladies, well, certainly younger than me. And therefore, I think that they will be an important part of our political processes going forward. And I want to thank you very much for your contributions and to wish you all the best. And to summarize before I hand over to Ambassador Hamad, I think that essentially what this platform does is that it allows us to understand what the weaknesses are in terms of getting women to the table from the perspective of those of you who are actors yourselves, and to be able to provide that support so that we can move from one level to the other. And we very much look forward to continuing to work with you on that journey. Thank you very much. Ambassador Hamad, over to you.
Your Excellency, Madam Tete, thank you so very much for a wonderful moderation, for keeping the time, and also for a great summary. Thank you so much for a job well done. Greatly appreciated. We now move, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, with your permission, to our closing session of day one. This session will include some statements, but before that, we will have a presentation on the summary of today. The summary of today will be done by my dear colleague and sister and friend, Rita. Rita, are you around? Thank you so much. Please go ahead.
I'm here, Ambassador Sahle, I'm here.
Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Sahle, moderator for the day, Your Excellencies, and I stand on the protocol that has been established from the beginning of this meeting until now. And I thank you very much for the honor you've given me to try to summarize the outcome of our deliberations today, as we have been looking at women in participation in leadership, actually high-level forum on women in governance and political participation, enhancing African women's role in leadership with a special leverage in the fight against COVID-19, looking at the role that women play in responding to COVID-19 and beyond. I think it's been very rich deliberations today. And what I love about today's work really has been very practical. We have been looking at really how practically women can be brought to the table and be enhanced to participate in leadership and governance. When we look at the first, really from the very beginning, I would say from the very beginning, during the opening statements, we have really looked at how, and I think the conclusion there has been very simple, is that Africa has done a lot in supporting women and ensuring that women are brought to the table and that they are empowered to participate at decision-making level and leadership level. But again, when we went to the statistics, we were told that actually it's just like 21%. And globally, the level of women participation in politics and leadership is 21.1%. So you see, Africa, we are average. We have done a lot, but we are average. So we still need to do a lot. And I think the main question that was asked was why? Why are we still at this level? Why are we still at an average level? What needs to be done? And that is really looking at the two panels that have been moderated this afternoon. We are looking at the how. The first panel, which looked at COVID-19 and the impact of women in COVID-19. And I think the beginning of that discussion was COVID-19 by itself has taught us that it is not business as usual. So we cannot continue to operate in the way we used to operate before. Things have to change, there's need to change. And therefore, if we are operating differently in this current environment, which is different, why then should we continue to treat women in the same way? First question. Second question, why should women continue to operate in the same way? And these are the things we are handling today. We are saying it is not enough to keep women in the situation of COVID-19 just as victims, but looking at how women have been useful in providing responses to COVID-19. And a lot of that was discussed at national level. This was led by Her Excellency, the Commissioner for Social Affairs, and gave us details of what they have been doing at national level, at the continental level, and even at the international level. And for the African Union, again, this is Commissioner for Social Affairs, a woman. She's the first for the AU for COVID-19. And I think she's done a remarkable job. And we are saying she was actually challenged. She was asked, what are the qualities? What have been your qualities in ensuring that women actually provide and bring what they have to the table in the fight to COVID-19? And she said, we have women not just as victims and beneficiaries, but we have them as nurses, as doctors, as caregivers, at the family level, at the community level. We have them as ministers of health. We have them at the decision-making levels. But what the special thing that women are bringing on the table is they are passionate, they are persistent, they believe in the cause, they are collaborative, they are transparent, they are visionary, they are supportive to each other. She even gave a long examples of how they've been supporting each other with the different commissioners, different UN women in leadership at the national level with the ministers and so forth. So I think the question today being the how, not so much the what, that is the problem. So now we need to look at how we can empower women to respond to COVID-19. We are saying that these qualities are important and they need to be leveraged. So therefore we need to get more women to make sure that they bring their passion to the table. They bring the support for each other to the table. They collaborate beyond their roles to make sure that they are collaborating across the board. But also that to ensure that the youthful leaders, youthful women leaders are also brought on the table. And as I go on with the issue of leadership, you will see how these qualities come to play. And I think the question that has been asked when it comes to leadership, why are women not effectively on the leadership and decision-making table? Why is there a gap? And I think to start off there, this was the panel that was ably moderated by both Her Excellency Gawanas, but also Her Excellency Madam Tete. And we are saying, in fact, the question was asked, what table? What table are we talking about? And the answer was very clear. It is at all tables. A table, the leadership table at all levels, rather. Leadership table at all levels in all sectors, including at community level, at the local level, at the political level, even looking at the political parties, looking at the peace and security, at the election level, and so forth. So what needs to be done? And this is the question that Her Excellency Madam Tete has asked very clearly. We should make sure that women are not just left at the supportive level when it comes to leadership, but rather that they participate effectively at these decision-making tables. They are, how do we bring them to this table? How do we make sure that they're able to participate effectively, and how do we make sure that they remain at this level? And so we are saying the response was that we need to build women, build them with an education, with skills, build their financial base, build the community also, to make sure that the community changes perception of what the role of women is in terms of engaging them at the table. Also deal with affirmative action and make sure that there's deliberate policy that ensures the support of women in the decision-making level. Also make sure that we have legislation that supports the role of women in decision-making level, ensure that women are also brought to, the build allies, yes, that they are supported to remain at the table, building allies among women, ensuring that the younger women are also modeled and empowered to join the women at the decision-making table, also making sure that we build allies at the different levels of leadership, including with men and other different stakeholders at the community level. And basically what we are saying is that we need a common vision across the different divide, a common vision in supporting women across the different across the different sectors of the community and across different levels of leadership and decision-making at the community and national level. I think this is what I can say is the outcome of our meeting today, that we need to support women, we need to build bridges to ensure that women are brought on the table, and to build the capacity of women that they are able to participate effectively at the table. And I want to conclude by saying that today we have not just been looking at the challenges, but rather at the opportunities and how to exploit those opportunities in ensuring that women are empowered to take leadership role and also to participate effectively in those positions of leadership. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, Excellencies.
Thank you very much, Madam Rita, for a wonderful summary of the outcomes of the deliberations of day one of this high-level seminar. Now we move to closing remarks of day one. The first one will be by Her Excellency Madam Minata Samati Sisuma, African Union Commissioner for Political Affairs. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup, ambassadeur Salah. Je ne sais pas, est-ce qu'il nous est possible d'écouter le vice-président ou cela n'est toujours pas, on n'a toujours pas le son avant qu'on passe à la clôture?
Your Excellency, we're going to have it at the end of the program. We're still working on the video clip, so we'll have it at the end of the program for closing. Thank you so much.
OK. Merci beaucoup, ambassadeur Salah, pour votre modération. Et je voudrais également remercier Rita pour la synthèse qu'elle a bien voulu faire à la fin de notre séance, ce dialogue de haut niveau de cet après-midi. Je tiens à remercier sincèrement l'ensemble des intervenantes. Je commencerai par ma sœur et notre co-fondatrice de Aoline, Madame Bineta Diop, pour ces mots qu'elle a bien voulu présenter au début de notre rencontre. et surtout les actions déjà entreprises pour que le réseau continue à aller de l'avant. Je tiens aussi à remercier Madame Poumzile, merci beaucoup pour votre présence et merci pour votre mot et merci pour ce que vous faites en faveur des femmes pour voir plus de femmes en politique et au-delà de la politique pour voir les femmes émerger, apporter leur contribution sur le continent africain. Nous avons suivi avec intérêt l'expérience, la grande expérience de grandes dames dont nous sommes fiers. Et je citerai Madame Jewel Howard pour son expérience, surtout sa contribution à la paix et à la stabilité de son pays. Le combat qu'elle a mené a porté des fruits et nous sommes fiers de cela. Et merci d'avoir partagé avec nous votre expérience. Nous avons eu également d'écouter la commissaire Amira El Fadil et également Madame, comment dirais-je, Madame, Rawlings, Madame Rawlings, excusez-moi, pour aussi l'expérience qu'elle elle a bien voulu aussi partager avec nous. Les débats ont été riches, fouillés, et je tiens à dire merci. Merci à toutes les intervenants, sans oublier ma sœur Gawana et Anna Tété pour leur modération. Et j'ai été émerveillé d'écouter les jeunes femmes qui ont partagé leur expérience, les difficultés qu'elles ont et comment elles peuvent, elles ont contribué et comment nous pouvons relever ensemble les défis qui nous restent à relever sur le continent africain. J'ai vu les participants, nous avons eu beaucoup de participantes et de participants. Il y a des questions qui ont été posées et je ne reviendrai pas sur le briefing ou les recommandations issus de nos travaux de cet après-midi, mais je tenais à insister sur quelques points. L'éducation. Toutes les intervenantes ont insisté sur la nécessité d'avoir une éducation et le manque de formation aussi est un handicap pour les femmes. Celles qui ont partagé leur expérience ont parlé toutes de cela et il faut renforcer les capacités des femmes. Il faut des qualités, il faut croire en la femme et nous devons croire en nous pour continuer à aller de l'avant et le manque de confiance est un handicap et cela ne doit pas être le cas. Nous devons avoir confiance et aller de l'avant et pour pouvoir contribuer justement à changer la donne sur le continent africain. Il a été également relevé que les femmes sont là, elles votent, mais elles ne sont pas suffisamment mises à l'avant parce qu'on ne les implique pas, on ne les met pas correctement sur les listes et les partis politiques ont un rôle à jouer à ce niveau. Il faut donner des opportunités aux femmes. Il faut... Il y a quelqu'un qui a son micro ouvert et ça interfère, s'il vous plaît. L'équipe technique qui nous appuie, j'ai reconnu la voix. Si vous pouvez arrêter votre micro, s'il vous plaît. Et je disais qu'il faut qu'on permette aux femmes de participer en politique, pas uniquement en politique, tous les secteurs sont concernés. Nous avons le secteur public, le secteur privé, il faut à tous les niveaux une égalité pour permettre de bâtir cette Afrique que nous voulons. Il faut une égalité des sexes. Les textes existent et j'ai aussi retenu, en plus de ce que Rita a dit, les textes existent au niveau national, au niveau continental et au niveau international, mais ces textes ne sont pas mis en œuvre. Pourquoi? Il faut internaliser ces textes, il faut plus d'action au niveau de nos États membres pour permettre aux femmes de participer en politique. Et surtout, ce qui a retenu mon attention aussi, c'est les jeunes femmes. Il faut être élu, c'est vrai, mais il faut soutenir celles qui sont élues, celles qui ont des responsabilités où il faut les soutenir et elles aussi, à leur tour, il faut qu'elles tirent d'autres jeunes d'âme pour aller de l'avant. C'est à ce prix qu'on peut changer les choses sur le continent africain. Le financement, depuis la semaine passée, les consultations, la question du financement avait été soulevée, mais là, il y a un plus. Les partis politiques sont financés, mais les femmes n'ont pas accès à ce financement. Il faudra qu'on insiste sur cet aspect aussi. Il faut que ce financement soit accessible aux femmes. Il y a une question que j'ai vue sur la plateforme. Qu'en est-il des personnes vivant avec un handicap? La question n'a pas été occultée par la commission et nous avons un protocole sur cette question. Le protocole n'a pas perdu cela de vue et c'est cela aussi, j'insiste auprès de nos États membres pour que tous ces textes qui sont très beaux et que nous avons, que ces textes puissent être mis en œuvre. Ce n'est pas le cas pour le moment. Si nous travaillons, si nous mettons en œuvre, personne ne sera laissé de côté. Nous allons cheminer avec l'ensemble des femmes, des filles et toutes celles qui vivent avec un handicap et qui ont un grand rôle à jouer parce qu'elles sont capables. Il faut encourager, il faut aller au-delà de l'encouragement, il faut domestiquer, il faut mettre en œuvre tous les traités qui sont là. Et ce qui n'est pas le cas, il faut qu'on travaille sur cet aspect. Je tiens, en tout cas pour terminer, à remercier l'ensemble des participants de cet après-midi pour leur contribution. Et il y a des gens qui ont intervenu, toutes les questions, et il y a des suggestions également. Nous allons prendre en compte tout cela et il y a des bonnes pratiques qu'il faudra partager et cela aussi a été relevé. Il y a des pays qui ont des pratiques qui sont bien et il faudra inclure tout cela. Voilà un peu ce que je voulais dire. En tenant, je tiens à remercier l'ensemble des participantes, l'ensemble des participants. J'ai vu des hommes avec nous, cela a été relevé. Nous encourageons vraiment les hommes aussi à être à nos côtés. C'est ensemble qu'on pourra changer cette situation sur le continent africain. Nous allons continuer ce débat demain et je tiens à vous dire merci beaucoup. Et la question de COVID-19 n'a pas été oublié, on en a parlé également et demandé à chacune et à chacun de respecter les mesures de barrière de l'OMS et de Africa CDC. C'est à ce prix qu'on pourra être en bonne santé et saluer le travail de toutes celles qui travaillent au quotidien pour nous permettre de sortir de la crise ou de la pandémie du coronavirus. Voilà un peu ce que je voulais partager avec vous pour compléter ce que Rita a dit, en remerciant vraiment les participantes, les panélistes, Gawana et toutes celles et tous ceux qui ont intervenu cet après-midi pour nous permettre d'améliorer le plan d'action qui sera lancé demain. Et à la même heure, nous encourageons les participants et aussi ceux qui sont intéressés, les contributions, nous allons continuer cela demain. Il y a des suggestions qui sont faites sur la plateforme, on tiendra compte de tout cela. Et merci beaucoup, monsieur le modérateur, et merci à l'ensemble vraiment des participantes des Nations Unies, de l'Union africaine et sans oublier l'équipe qui nous soutient, l'équipe du PNUD avec à sa tête ma sœur Aouna et ONU Femmes, aussi bien au niveau de New York, en dehors de New York et d'autres partenaires des institutions des Nations Unies qui sont avec nous et également l'Union africaine avec l'équipe technique de DPA, du bureau de Madame Job, du bureau du président et toutes et tous ceux qui ont contribué à la tenue de ce forum de cet après-midi et merci beaucoup et stay safe.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for your closing remarks of day one. We greatly appreciate your words of wisdom. And now I would like to go ahead without any further delay to call on Her Excellency Ms. Ahuna Igiakwona, Assistant Secretary General and Director of UNDP Africa, to deliver her closing remarks of day one. Your Excellency, you have the floor, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much, our esteemed moderator, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. What a pleasure it's been listening to this conversation. I want to thank all of you participants really for being present and for all the contributions you've made, the panelists, the moderators, everyone has just been so guided and so spirited. I am now really looking forward to tomorrow. My dear sister and co-collaborator, Her Excellency, Madam Minata Samate, you continue to inspire us, and we're very proud of you and all the commissioners, women commissioners of the African Union who continue to lift women up and create conditions for us to change the situation that we know needs to be changed. Why are we doing all of this? Why are we creating this platform? It is because the world, our world, is in crisis. There is a crisis on our shores. Our civilization is at risk. And it isn't, this crisis isn't coronavirus. For me, the crisis precisely is the absence of women at that leadership table on the continent of Africa. This is an existential issue for Africa. And we now have enough evidence that without women at the leadership table, Africa can forget about rising. It's just not possible. It hasn't happened in the last 5 decades. It will not happen until we change this piece of the puzzle. And this is why it's very encouraging to hear that we have the wisdom on the continent to make this shift by women, young and old, and by men as well. We don't have to go import the ideas, the knowledge, the innovation from elsewhere. It exists within the continent and among African people at all levels. We've heard it on this platform today. And so it's an exciting moment to connect with the depth of ingenuity and wisdom that exists about how we make this transition. And there are two things that stand out for me today in this conversation. One is this idea of confidence, self-confidence that women must develop, possess, and deploy on this issue of leadership. So starting with that power within, I think is crucial, and we must find a way to cultivate this across the generation of women on the continent. Where it exists, we nurture it and give it position. Where it doesn't exist, we create it. That momentum, that building of our collective strength through platforms such as this is one core ingredient in making this initiative work. The second thing I pick up is about influence. And we've heard from all the panelists today that just having a seat on the table, being at the table is not enough. The affirmative action to increase the representation of women in parliament and other places is only a first step. We need to go beyond that to actually make sure that once you're at the table, you are influencing. You are changing the situation. You are demonstrating that you have value and that you are making sure that others see that value by the way you act, by the way you deliver. And thirdly, has to do with this mindset shift that everything we do going forward in this action plan must be directed at shifting the mind and the old habits that have trouble believing in women as leaders. And this is a call to incredible action here, that we must shift the mind on this issue of whether women can make good leaders or not. And I want to, from that perspective, end with one of my favorite poem in prose of Maya Angelou. And this verse comes from her piece on In All Ways a Woman. And I read this poem for you. The woman who survives intact and happy must be at once tender and tough. She must have convinced herself that she, her values, and her choices are important. In a time and world where males hold sway and control, the pressure upon women to yield their rights of way is tremendous. And it is under those very circumstances that the woman's toughness must be in evidence. End of quote. Being a woman in today's world requires warrior skills. Ladies, go shape your warrior skills, but without violence. We are excited about what tomorrow will bring. And I thank you all for hanging in there with us and look forward to continuing tomorrow. Thank you, moderator, for your usual very stable, steady, solid performance and for being a he for she. You're an example as well to many. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Madam Ahuna Isakwana, Assistant Secretary General and Director of UNDP Africa, for your words of wisdom. Before we conclude, I'd like to check with my colleagues, Angela and others, on the readiness of the video message of His Excellency the Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission. Is it ready?
Thank you, Ambassador Salah. Unfortunately, we only got the video as the process was continuing, so we haven't had a chance to test it, but we will try to run it again, and it is my hope that it will work now.
All right, let's try and see.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I think we still having.
Yeah, we still have challenges. Apologies, we'll have this ready tomorrow.
All right, so let's then
Thank you.
Go ahead and conclude this day one. Your Excellency, Ms. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, former President of the Republic of Liberia. Your Excellency, Ms. Joel Howard Taylor, Vice President of the Republic of Liberia. Your Excellency, Ambassador Thomas Kwasi Kwati, Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission. Your Excellency, Ambassador Minata Samati Susuma, Commission of Political Affairs of the African Union Commission. Your Excellency, Ms. Amira Al-Fadl, Commissioner for Social Affairs of the African Union Commission. Your Excellency, Madame Benita Diop, AU Special Envoy on Women, Peace and Security. Your Excellency, Bianas Guanas, Under Secretary General and a Special Advisor on Africa to the United Nations Secretary General. Your Excellency, Madame Hannah Tete, Under Secretary General and a Special Representative of the Secretary General of the United Nations to the African Union and Head of the United Nations Office to the AU. Your Excellency, Dr. Formozel Malabo Ngoka, and UN Under Secretary General and UN Women Executive Director. Your Excellency, Ms. Ahuna Isakwana, Assistant Secretary General and Director of UNDP Africa. Honorable Ministers, Deputy Ministers, and government officials from AU member states present with us this afternoon. Honorable Members of Parliament of the African Union member states, Your Excellencies, ambassadors and members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished representative of regional economic communities, distinguished representative of AU organs and institutions, distinguished religious and traditional leaders, distinguished representative of UN agencies, civil society organizations, NGOs, academia, and media, Excellencies, distinguished representative of civil society, and also, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues from the African Union Commission and UNDP, all protocol duly observed. We come to the end of day one of this high-level virtual forum on women in governance and political participation towards enhancing African women's role in leadership with focus on leveraging women leadership in the COVID-19 response and beyond. Let me, on behalf of the organizers, the Department of Political Affairs of the African Union Commission and UNDP, let me sincerely apologize for not answering all the questions that were posted due to time constraints, but surely the final report of this forum will reflect on all questions, inputs, comments that were not addressed. Let me also end by thanking each and every one of you for your active participation and contribution, and a special thanks, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, goes to the moderators, to the panelists, and to the interpreters, and to the technicians. Of course, I can't end without thanking my dear colleagues from the Department of Political Affairs of the African Union Commission and colleagues from the UNDP Africa Office for bringing us together this afternoon, and again, bringing us together tomorrow afternoon. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, looking forward to seeing you tomorrow afternoon, the 25th of June at 1500 hours Addis Ababa time. That is, of course, 8 o'clock in the morning, New York time. Have a nice evening, and please stay safe and healthy. Thank you so much. Goodbye, Your Excellencies and ladies and gentlemen.
Merci, ambassadeur. Bonne soirée à tous.